Welcome to Media Melanie Talks TV. I'm Melanie, and today I'm back to talk about Silo Season 2, Episode 6, Barricades. But before we dive in, I would love it if you would please hit that subscribe button. Every single subscription, every like, every comment really helps me here at the channel, and I just appreciate everybody who's been on my TV talk journey so far. So thank you for that, and thank you for subscribing. All right, let's start with the positive today. First, Silo has been renewed for 2 more seasons. We will get a full 4-season slate. Given that we know this is based on Hugh Howey's source material, I would imagine we will get the full story based on the novels. I know they have been taking some liberties just based on some comments I've been seeing here and there. So I am interested to see how this all ends. And I always appreciate when there is a plan in place, whether or not it is based on source material. Again, I personally have not read these books, and if you have, please don't post any major spoilers down below. I'm just here for this journey and this Silo ride, and I don't necessarily need to know what happened in the books. I'm here for the show. So also thank you for that. We had a kiss in this episode, you guys, Knox and Shirley. This was not a big shock. There has definitely been some will they, won't they vibe between the two of them. Now we know they will. So my question for you is, what are we going to call them? Are they Knoxley or are they Shirlox? Please drop a comment with your preference so that way we know how we can refer to them moving forward. Speaking of will they, won't they, we had Walker reminiscing, looking at photos of her and Carla from the past. Will they end up reunited? I certainly hope so. I love Walker as a character. She was very close to Juliette, and I really also hope Juliette and Walker are ultimately reunited. But I just love Walker's take no shit demeanor, right? She's this kind of understated boss bitch. When she speaks, people listen. I hope that means she will get reunited with Carla. We've got Billings on his continued journey being this moral compass, trying to do the right thing, trying to get to the bottom and the truth of what actually happened with Judge Meadows' death. Clearly, he does not believe that Knox and Shirley were guilty, and he's not just believing what Bernard told him either. I mean, he's putting himself at kind of a big risk here, especially given what has transpired with Sheriff's past. I admire him for doing the right thing. I admire Kathleen Billings for also doing the right thing. She's trying to get Doc Nichols down there so they can take this bullet out of Kennedy. And she's putting herself at major risk too. I mean, she's got a baby. That could have turned very bad. So these people are so brave. The brave Billings, right? But Billings does end up learning something from Kennedy, of course, about the computer monitor situation. And like he said, this is something that once I tell you, there's no going back. So the seed has been planted in Billings. And I think the more knowledge he gets, the more information, the further away he's going to turn from Bernard. And that may not play out well for him. And let's say something does happen to Billings. Who's going to be the next sheriff? I mean, now we've had Sims lose his position in judicial and become the new judge. I do wonder who would be next up for sheriff, but hopefully we see Billings emerge strong here. And speaking of strong, he's not suffering as much from the Silo syndrome. As Kathleen said, he's not taking the herbs. We heard them say Silo syndrome is more about the suffering of the human condition because humans are not meant to be living underground, right? So is this new boost in confidence? Is this new mission helping give Billings some sort of inner strength that's now allowing his body to not be suffering these symptoms as much? I don't know, but either way, good for him. I'm glad to see that he's not suffering. Billings is such a good guy character. I think we're all rooting for. So there's nothing I'd love to see more than him not suffering from the Silo syndrome. So we'll have to see how that progresses. And we did see Bernard say, I lost the sheriff, but he did not shoot the deputy. Moving on. Speaking of Bernard, were those tears I detected in your eyes, Bernard? The moment with him speaking to Meadows' corpse, it was pretty emotional. We don't see Bernard emoting like this very often. I mean, he killed the woman. Yes, we do see maybe the spark of regret. I do think that they really did love each other. I mean, Bernard loved her more than any other human he's ever encountered in his life, I'm sure. And she factored into this decision to protect the silo. And I think Bernard is maybe starting to think, if there are bigger things at play here that even I don't know about, given the Salvador Quinn letter, could he be really regretting the decision he made? I think he regrets it no matter what, but he also still has to do what he has to do for the silo. But that moment when he's speaking to her corpse and she's just laying there cold and quiet and he's got tears in his eyes, for a big bad, it's always interesting to see them have this emotional side and have a little bit of a breakdown. That said, Tim Robbins is just so good in this role. I mean, right now, he's pretty much the entire show over there. If we didn't have Bernard, I mean, what would we have, right? So let's hope that Bernard's big badness continues all the way up until the end of season 4, because I love Tim Robbins in this role, and we need a Bernard Juliette face-off, and hopefully before the end of the season. I mean, as we also heard Bernard say, things are not optimum right now. People are turning against him. He lost the sheriff. There are just factors working against him now, and tensions are rising. Are people going to rebel? Are more people in authority going to go against Bernard? And it's interesting because now Bernard has a new shadow. Lucas, of course, has been working on decoding Salvador Quinn's letter. And what a smart dude to be able to just work through a cryptology situation. We do hear Bernard mention the Caesar shift. First of all, I guess Bernard hit the history books at some point, knowing that that was even a thing. Of course, it is a method in which you shift the letters to code and then decode something. So Lucas is onto something, but it does seem to be slow going. He's decoded 2 words, silo and alley. Like Bernard said, though, they're not going to spell silo wrong. So it does seem like he's on the precipice of determining something. And then episode 8 is actually titled The Book of Quinn. So even though I'm thinking, oh, this is definitely not a fast process, seems like 2 episodes from now, we might have this thing decoded and actually get some answers. But the big question is, what's in the letter, right? Are we going to learn more about the origins of the silo, of the people in charge? I'm thinking that will be one of the big reveals of the season. It's episode 8, so there's still going to be 2 more after that. But I've been waiting for a big reveal this whole season, and I am thinking, okay, if I can make it to episode 8, the Book of Quinn, we get some big answers on the silos. Great. I'm here for that. Let's get there. Let's do this thing, right? So as we're going through this episode, I eventually just accepted, okay, this is probably a Silo 18 centric episode. We're not going to get the bouncing back and forth. As we saw earlier in the season, we had an 18, then we had a 17, then we kind of had them melded together. But 3/4 of the way through, I'm like, okay, I just gave in to the fact that this is going to be all Silo 18 and we're not going to see Juliette. And then all of a sudden, we get what? 2-3 minutes of Silo 17. Have I mentioned I want Juliette back with her people? And I get it. It is a whole journey to get there. They are building towards this. They've been hinting at the tunnels perhaps being the method in which she is able to return. But with Solo out there doing this whole tit for tat, hey, I saved your life, you need to save mine, I don't think she's going to have a choice but to help him. And of course, we saw his childhood mentality shining through again. I'm sure as he's out there making the antibiotics, helping Juliette save her life from this infection, he's probably patting himself on the back like, wow, this is such a good plan. I can't wait. I'm going to hide her suit from her. And of course he did. And given how well he knows the silo, I don't think there's any way Juliette would be able to find that suit on her own. So he is putting her in this precarious situation where he's going to force her to help him. There are 10 months until the water fills up if Solo's calculations are correct. So yeah, that is plenty of time, but Juliette has other things on her mind. She wants to get back to her people, warn them about what transpired in Silo 17, and this is just yet another roadblock in the way. However, episode 7 is called The Dive. And I'm thinking, okay, it probably alludes to Juliette diving down into the water, fashioning the pump, getting it all, worked out for Solo. But at the same time, yeah, Juliette's amazing. She's smart. She is the underground post-apocalyptic MacGyver, as I have referenced before. But even for Juliette, that is a heavy lift to be able to fashion a pump out all of the water. I mean, in one episode, the dive, or is she going to dive down there and maybe instead of siphoning out and pumping out the water, Maybe she's going to go on a little tunnel dive and maybe she'll get back to the other silo sooner. But my question is, even if Juliette goes to the tunnel, gets back to silo 18, what is that reception going to be like? She's going to have to be super sneaky because they are on the verge of rebellion over there. And she wants to stop it by letting people know, you can't go outside. I think Juliette's return could be even more of a spark of rebellion because she's alive. If people find out, they may just rush outdoors or steal suits and try to get the good tape or whatever. But again, she will have to be very sneaky and strategic when she does make it back, if in fact it is via tunnels. She'll have to go find people that she is allied with and then trust those people to not tell everybody else about the tunnels. Could she go back? And I mean, you can't picture her just going back and making this big public announcement. Hey, I'm alive. Hey, there's another silo. I mean, talk about immediately erupting into chaos. So the way in which Juliette is reintroduced to silo 18 is going to be one of the most important factors this season. It's going to have to be done very tactfully because the reveal that she is alive to her people is going to just make people's brains explode. I mean, nobody even thinks she's alive still. We had Walker telling her dad, yeah, I gave her the good tape, but there's no way she's alive. She probably just made it far enough over the hill to die there. And the reason that Walker gave her the good tape is because Juliette wouldn't have wanted to die in sight of everybody like that. So that was her rationale for giving it to her, not because she thought she would actually be able to survive out there. So even Walker, I mean, imagine the look on her face when Juliette comes back. It makes the most sense Juliette would go to Walker first when she does return. She is one of her most trusted allies. So I'm hoping if Juliette does make it back, she's able to find somebody trustworthy to let them know she's alive, let them know what's going on, and then determine what's the best course of action for the silo. Do we shuffle some people over to this other silo and start a whole new deal? But also, how do you make the announcement to people to not rebel and go outside because now this knowledge of what happens in the other silo? So it'll be very interesting how this information is dispersed when and if Juliette does make it back. And she better. I've been waiting for her to return to her silo this entire season. And I understand they're building up a story. They need to create the drama. They've got the relationship between Solo and Juliette. And very clearly, Solo wants to stay in that silo. He has no intention of going anywhere. But let's say they bring people back to that silo. Solo, I don't think is going to allow that. But at the same time, I also don't know how he'd prevent it aside from just locking himself back in the vault again. So what is Silo's endgame here? How is his story going to continue or end? Will this be a one-season arc and he's gone and people take over his silo? I do think there's a lot to explore there and I'm interested to see it. I just wish it was moving a little bit faster. So overall, not a lot actually happened in this episode. There was a lot of fighting. Yes, barricades, aptly named, given the barricades. People are sawing things. I don't know. It felt a little filler for me. The last couple of episodes have, and I'm just hoping that they're gearing up for a really big back half of the season. And I'm optimistic. I mean, I loved season 1, right? But there were some very different things happening in season 1. And now that we have the separation in the two silos, hopefully that is just leading us to another big reveal. I really want to know, how did the silos get here? What happened where humanity destroyed the planet that they're living on? Because by the way, I'm still not giving up on my theory that maybe they're not even on Earth. Maybe they are on the moon or another planet or something because humanity destroyed Earth. So I don't know, maybe that's a crazy theory. I've been saying it since the beginning and we will see. But I really want to know the origin story of the silos. And I'm hoping that with the Book of Quinn episode, we get more of that. And it's not just more context on the rebellion. So we will see. After episode 8, the Book of Quinn, the next one is called The Safeguard. Episode 10 has not been named yet. So I'm wondering what the safeguard will mean as well. Does that mean they have to guard Juliette safely upon her return to Silo 18? Does that mean that once they have decoded Quinn's letter, they have to safeguard that information from everybody in the silo? Now we have Lucas as Bernard's shadow. So if anything does happen to Bernard, Lucas is going to be the one to step up into power, which is interesting because he just doesn't seem like he has the it factor to be the next Bernard. I mean, there's only one Bernard, and he's worked his whole life or his whole tenure here to protect the silo. So we'll see. Is Lucas going to turn into a big bad like Bernard once he gets more information? Will Lucas be able to keep it to himself? Yes, he swore an oath, but that might not always mean something. I mean, we know he had a friendship with Juliette. Maybe he wanted it to be more, but he did have some sort of connection to Juliette. So at some point, he may have to choose. Am I going to go with Bernard and the silo, or am I going to impart this information upon Juliette or somebody else once she does return? What if Juliette sought out Lucas and didn't realize that he's the new shadow? I don't think she can make it up that far in the silo undetected, obviously, especially with the barricades and whatnot. So that does seem unlikely. But I wonder, will there be a Lucas Juliette encounter at some point too? So all of this is to be determined. I'm really, really hoping that next week's episode, The Dive, gives us more. Hopefully that will move a little faster in getting Juliette back to her people, which again is just what I've been wanting to see. And I know a lot of people are here for the ride. They don't mind the story of Silo 17. And yeah, it's fine, whatever. But just for me, I can't wait for chaos to ensue when Juliette returns and the jaws on the floor when she does. What have you been thinking about the season of Silo so far? Definitely drop a comment, let me know. And if you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button. I am also covering Bad Sisters, also on Apple TV Plus, a dark comedy in its second season, and there's only one episode left. And there was a pretty big reveal in the last episode. So if you're not watching Bad Sisters, you need something to watch during the holidays, check it out. Speaking of the holidays, I dropped my 12 days of binge miss video. I made a complete fool of myself singing about TV shows I enjoyed throughout the year. So don't miss that. I've also got a video up about Black Doves, which is a quintessential December watch. And my top 10 shows of 2024 with special guest Craig Elston from 97.3 The Fan in San Diego. That is up as well. So if you're wondering my favorite shows of the year, you need something to watch over the holidays, do not miss that video. We covered a lot of ground and really offered a show for every taste in television. In the new year ahead, I am very excited to be covering Severance on Apple TV Plus. That's coming in January, The White Lotus coming in February, and then many other exceptional shows ahead that I do plan to cover in the new year. Hit the subscribe button. Make sure you like this video. Thank you to everybody who's been tuning in. I really appreciate it. Media Melanie, clicking off.